Hi, and hopefully you're joining us for this July webcast, which we're going to do right now live here at Viezu Technologies. I'm Paul Busby and I'm joined by Simon White. And in our last webcast, I hope you joined us then, we talked about a lot of the tuning tools that are available on the market, particularly the main European tools, the Alientech system, Auto Tuner and Magic Motorsport. Yep. And we had a lot of questions coming on this session, which is great. And we were asked if we could go on to talk about master file writing tuning software, which is exactly what we're doing today. So Simon, what have you got lined up for us in today's session?
So today we're going to do an overview of ECM Titanium 3.0. Very popular, very user-friendly piece of software for those that are both just getting into tuning and those who have been tuning for quite a while on a range of software suites. It's a very powerful piece of software that is sometimes overlooked for things like WinOLS and other software out there. But we're going to give an overview of ECM Titanium today on a SiMOS 19.6, so a Golf GTI ECU. And then we're going to follow that up with really sort of the sort of premier piece of tuning software out there, which is the WinOLS.
Okay.
So WinOLS we're going to look at afterwards. We're going to use a similar file as well, SiMOS 19, and we're going to go through and show you the benefits of the software and actually probably some tips and tricks and sort of hints that you may not have come across before, where you can actually use one piece of software to help the other as well.
Okay, so we're going to get right into the software and right into the map on the software. Okay, great. Now, as I just mentioned, this is a live session. We really want your questions. Your questions drive the next session, and of course, anything that we can cover in this for you whilst we're live. So somewhere above my head here, there should be a Q&A button. Find the Q&A button, please fire in your questions, and we do our best to make this session as much as we can about you and your questions. And importantly, in the next session, after this one for August, we're going to move on to Stage X software by Magic Motorsport and SwiftTech. So we felt there was too much to try and cover in just today's July session. So we're going to keep on the master file writing software as we go through the next couple of months. And it's your chance again to fire in any questions before those webcasts actually happen. So if we're ready, shall we start going into ECM now, Simon? Is that the plan?
Yeah, makes sense, yeah.
Okay, let's fire up.
So all being well with modern technology, you should be able to see my screen now. And we've got ECM Titanium open. For those that haven't upgraded to ECM Titanium 3.0, do check our website for that. This isn't a sales pitch, but it does have a lot of really cool features that the previous version didn't have. We'll get into a couple of those as we go through this sort of overview of the software. But the first one you'll notice on the screen, before we even get anything open, is that we have a work project on the left-hand side, and we have a comparison project on the right. So in the old version of ECM, you may be familiar with this, Paul, you may not, but I'll cover it anyway. You could kind of replicate a file you've already done before using a driver, but it wasn't really designed for it. We kind of forced the tuning through that we wanted to do. Now, and it's kind of learning from some of the other pieces of software that are out there, you can directly compare two different projects side by side. So you've tuned Mr. Customer's Golf GTI or his Golf R. You've spent hours on the dyno, data logging, developing the greatest tune you can for it. And next week you get another customer come in. Great. You don't want to start it all from scratch.
Okay.
So now with ECM, you can compare the new customer's file against one you've tuned previously and effectively copy the changes across. So it allows you to shortcut the process and the development process massively.
And is that because it might not be an exact software match? So you can't just copy and paste the whole thing. You're comparing to see if there's differences in software types. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, for the master tuners that are out there, and we'll just get a file open now, you'll be familiar with things like VR or virtual reads. You may have heard of that term before, of course. So a virtual read downloads an original from the tool manufacturer's server. So in this case, ECM Titanium, you'd be using KES3 typically. You ID the car, virtual read, like a SiMOS ECU, pulls from the server. Now, those that are familiar with how those numbers and things work will be able to identify on their database if they've tuned that vehicle before, and they could probably use that exact same software. However, it does come with risk. If you miss a digit somewhere, you could put the wrong software on the vehicle. So the comparison software here not only allows you to check for those tuning differences to copy them across, but also confirm, is it the same vehicle? Is it the same virtual read, I should say, as one you've done before? So it's just a really cool way to save yourself a lot of time in that process. So we're going to open up an original file, and I'm just going to go back one actually. This one we've got prepared for a little bit later on inside of ECM. So we're going to open this up, and the first thing it's going to do on the screen, you'll notice it's searching for a driver, and it's actually found one straight away. So I'm just going to stop that search in the background.
Now, for anyone that's not familiar with the term driver, this is like a map pack. Is that a correct?
Yeah, it's the best way to describe it. Now, every piece of tuning software or tuning suite calls them things slightly different. WinOLS, it's called obviously a map pack or super map pack for something called a damos. We'll get into that a little bit later on. inside of ECM Titanium. It's called a driver. And what it effectively is a full list of all of the maps that you need for tuning. So your stage 1 and typically most of your stage 2 tuning requirements are covered within what's called a driver. So what this does for you as a tuner, you haven't got to spend countless hours trying to locate the maps inside the reed, worrying that you've potentially got the wrong map and you're trying to make changes to the wrong thing. You've got Alientech's department, their full technical support team, building the driver based off multiple damos information, their knowledge, their workings with processors.
So I'm guessing this is one of the key advantages of Alientech, and I hear people say this, of course, it comes with the drivers. There are 2 versions, though. You can buy a credit version that doesn't come with the drivers. That's my understanding. And it's like a pay-as-you-go version of Alientech ECM, or you have the full version, which comes with the drivers, which basically gives you unlimited map packs for as long as your software is in license.
And that's exactly it, yeah. I mean, the credit version, okay, if you're tuning something from 1999 and you only tune that one particular ECU, you've probably got most of the drivers for it after 6 months or so. But in reality, you never want to turn a customer away. Keep the ECM in license. You've always got access to your map packs then, or to your drivers, and you're not having to worry about, have I got enough credits on the tool? Do I need to buy a driver for this? It just makes sense for the very small fee for keeping the ECM in date.
Okay, give us a tour. What have we got?
Okay, so we've got the driver downloaded now. You'll be able to see in the background a few of the maps starting to appear. And this is a really cool feature of the new ECM 3.0, which is the database system. Now, those that use the old one, again, you'll be familiar. You could store your drivers in the system, and you could store some of the modifications you've made. But now this is working very similar to WinOLS in a way, which is a project database. So inside of here, we can store the original. When we've made our modified file, we can store the modified file against it as well. We can store multiple modified files against this driver. So if you're developing a stage 1 and then a stage 2 and even beyond, you can store them all against this particular driver for that vehicle.
I sort of know a bit about ECM. I mean, I'm not a map writer and I never pretend to be, but that is a new feature. That's quite a powerful new feature too, isn't it?
It's a really, really powerful feature, yeah. And it lends itself to the project comparison as well. So having your file saved as a project enables the comparison feature to work a lot easier as well. But it means all your files are stored in one location. You're not having to root around on your desktop or in a USB stick to try and find version 3 of a file you did for a particular turbo or exhaust system. It's stored in one easy to use place, and you can put notes and descriptions in there as well. So a quick note of the fuel changes you made, timing, etc.
Okay. So you do build up a little like almost library of what you've done.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, it's that library, that repertoire of all your tuning files you've done for that particular vehicle. Especially when you're developing something new, you want to have that development train to go along. So when you need to go back a version because something hasn't worked, it's there ready at hand.
Okay, cool.
So into the software itself, you'll see on the left-hand side we've got the 2, what they call RAMs, the 2 slots, if you like, for the files, original and modified. Now, the way pretty much all tuning suites work is you have an original file, and then you have a copy of it put on top, so that you're modifying that temporary version. So the original always stays as original in the system. On the screen here, we can see we've got a number of folders. I'm just going to minimize a few of these so you can see just how much detail there is in this driver. We have functions for turbo system, engine torque, rail pressure, limiters, fuel pump. I'm going to hone in on this one here, special features. For those that like our overrun and our burbles and, dare I say, pops and bangs.
Now that's got to be quite new too, because the ECM I know didn't do things like that. So that's another new feature?
It's another new feature of the drivers. So it's not so much the ECM itself, that's the advancement of the drivers.
So they're getting the map packs
everything
bigger
is
and constantly
because
people are probably asking for these things.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that you probably didn't know too much with the ECM drivers. If you have a driver that comes through with particular maps, and let's say you need the special features, the overrun, the fuel cutoff, and it's not there in a driver, it might be an old one, might not be a very popular vehicle for tuning, you can actually request for them to add that in there.
And they'll do that live?
They'll do that for you, yeah. Typically, around about an hour during the normal working time to come back, depending on how complicated that particular driver is. But you can put that request in there. So the same way, if there's no driver automatically detected, you can request a brand new driver to be made. They will actually go and make additional changes to existing ones. So if there's something new you need added in there, providing it can be added, and you're not asking for a feature that doesn't exist inside of the ECU, they will look at that and try and add that into there for you.
And I guess a lot of people might say, oh, well, why do I need a subscription? Why am I paying this license for my ECM Titanium? But let's be clear, you get free unlimited map packs, and you can put in requests to change those map packs, and there's no fee for doing that. I think the license on ECM Titanium is like £500. What's that, about 620, 30, 40 American dollars?
Yeah.
That's a lot of software package and support for not a lot of money a year.
So put it another way, for $630 odd or £500, you're a sole trader. It's just you, the tuning tool, and ECM. You've now got a support team of 20 to 30 guys looking through these files, trying to make particular drivers for you, adding additional things to the drivers, all whilst you're doing other work. You're not having to spend hours
looking for that as you might do in other software.
Yeah. Now, you can do that inside of ECM. There's the driver maker function. It's quite an advanced feature where you can literally make your own map packs inside of here, make your own custom drivers. But if you've got a team in Italy who built the software and have access to a huge database of what they call damos files or factory definition files, you'd be a fool not to rely on that support network.
Yeah.
It's there, full team there, you should use it. So I said we've got the special functions inside of here, deactivations as well. Exhaust gas valve can be turned off. And then our normal tuning parameters, things like our spark, fuel system. We've even got fuel pressure pump as well in there. So there's a whole host of things inside of this ECU. You'll often find inside of a driver, there's more maps than you actually need for a stage 1 or even stage 2.
I should imagine so, looking at that list, yeah.
But what it does is it gives you the knowledge and information you need to make that tune. So it might be a particular map that you don't need. For example, let's say the compressor speed. We might not need to know the maximum compressor speed, but having that in there, if you're looking at upgrading the turbo, you can then see that specification of the stock turbo without having to bench test it anywhere. It gives you a lot of additional information inside of here.
I guess a risk could be, though, that I've got this huge list of maps and there must be some pressure to go and change them all. But actually, I'm guessing sometimes, more is less and you don't need to change that much to get the power result if that's what you're looking for.
Correct. And this is one of the things we teach on our training courses on Remap 101. As I've just said, there's a number of maps in that driver, many of which you will never need to modify to get a fantastic tune out of the vehicle. Nice, safe, reliable stage 1 and stage 2 tunes with the driver. The temptation is, I'll just change one more limiter. I'll just put a bit more boost and a bit more this and a bit more. And what you end up doing is moving the ECU software, the calibration, so far out of its operating parameters that actually it has a negative effect. It's trying too hard to do something and another safety kicks in and pulls the car back. So it's one of the key things that we take you through on the training courses we do on Remap 101 and the live in-person courses in our classrooms, both here in the UK and around the world. It's understanding the ECU strategy of how we can extract the most safely from the ECU with leaving the smallest fingerprint inside the ECU. Okay. So we want to change as few things as possible to get the most out of the vehicle.
Just because it's there, you don't need to change it. Simon, just before you go on, I think we may have our first question that's just come in. What have we got?
Can you use ECM with auto tuner?
Now, that is a good question. I'm not sure who's asked that. Yeah, classically, I think people always say ECM Titanium, I've got to use it with Alientech because, of course, the two are a perfect marriage. Simon, what else can we use it with? I seem to know in the back of my mind that it won't always work with auto tuner and can be a bit of hit and miss. What is the professional's answer to that question?
Yes and no. Typically, yes. Now, this is down to how the different tools read the files. I won't get too much into details of that. We covered that a little bit in the previous webinar. And if you want some more specific answers on the different tool reading, feel free to reach out to us with questions for after the webinar. But in short, the files are typically a different size from AutoTuner. AutoTuner's OBD, for example, reads just the map data typically, whereas a KES file will read the map data and some additional information.
Right.
What it means is when you put it into ECM, ECM is looking for certain addresses that aren't there in the AutoTuner read.
And the result of that?
Well, the result of that is it won't find a driver automatically, typically.
Right.
However, you can always request a driver. And what will happen then is typically if one is supported for that AutoTuner or that Magic or Dim Sport read or whatever the tool is you've used, if there is a compatible one, their support team will come back and let you know via email which driver is compatible.
So the Alientech support team will actually help you use the ECM Titanium for other tools other than their own.
So
I didn't know that.
The example we're using at the moment is an ECU, which is from the brand new Mark 8 Golf.
Yep.
It's the GTI and the Golf R, which uses a SiMOS 19.6 ECU.
Which is on the AutoTuner, but is not yet on the KES.
Yes.
I know that.
However, we're looking at a driver inside of ECM for a SiMOS 19.6.
Which could only be used on an AutoTuner, typically, or another tool.
Or something, yeah.
Okay, great.
I think that answers the perfect example to answer that question.
One more question live in.
This is from Robert Zika, Florida. Would it work with Flex?
Robert from Florida.
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert. I'm going to let Simon field this one
Just
for
for all
you.
our recent courses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Texas. The same answer, yes and no. Exactly the same answer in terms of the auto-tuner response. In many cases, the Flex will probably actually work a little bit quicker and easier with ECM because of the way the Flex reads the files in a very similar way to the Alientech KES tool. So auto-tuner tends to be a smaller file, just the map data only. The Flex and the KES tend to read a slightly bigger file, map data and some additional information. So you're more likely to get a successful auto detection with Magic.
For people that are watching, could you give it a rough statistic? How often is that likely to work? And, is it once in a blue moon, or is it actually the majority of the time?
No, I mean, in terms of auto tuner, you're probably looking maybe 5%, if that, will automatically detect.
Yeah.
But of course, you can send it off to the support
That's
team.
really quite small in that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is 95% of the time you probably need their support to make it work.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
think that's quite clear.
ECM is really designed to work with the KES tool. I mean, it's by Alientech for the Alientech tool.
Yeah.
However, as we've just covered off, it does support files from other tools.
Give me a rough percentage, if you know, on the Magic tool, how much more likely is it to work on that tool?
It's if the map sizes are similar, so the files are similar size, you're more likely to get a sort of 40% success rate on there. I don't want to commit to anything higher because, of course, it wasn't engineered and designed to run with that, and all it takes is one slightly different size file, and it can throw a percentage.
Well, I hope that helped with those questions. I'm not conscious too much of time, but we do want to get a little bit deeper into the software. So I'm going to let Simon, if you want to just crack on and show us a little bit more about the features and functions once you're into map writing.
Okay, so let's open a map. Let's have a look at something. We have a limiter of engine torque. Let's open this map up on the screen. So what ECM will do is it will group a number of these maps together as well for you. So we've actually got, if you see at the bottom of the screen here, 1 of 5. You can imagine for certain functions, there might be several maps for different strategies in the ECU. So a torque limiter might have an eco mode, a sports mode, it's hot outside, I need to reduce the torque a bit mode. What ECM has done is grouped those similar maps together for us to make it much easier from a modification point of view. So we can modify the top level map and it will automatically apply the changes to the similar maps behind for us.
Totally automatically. You are just changing one map and it's doing the rest for you.
Yes.
That's a nice
So
feature.
when they're grouped together, it makes tuning much easier. Of course, we do recommend that you confirm and check those maps are the same. As you can see here on the screen, I've just changed the maps using the page up and page down. I'm on map 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All the values are the same on the left-hand side. So it means when we do make a change to one, we can be confident that the change is going to be the same to all of them.
Nice.
So I'm just going to activate this map now. So in terms of making changes, there's a number of different ways you can do this, and it's very similar to most pieces of software. We can pick a starting RPM point. We can highlight all of the map table if we wanted to, and we can come up to the percentage box and we can make a change, plus 20%, for example. Let's just see what that looks like. And we will press page up to add our 20%. Probably a little bit excessive on there first to start with. And of course, this isn't how you would just go in and start making the changes to the ECU. You would need to understand the structure and the strategy of the ECU, what's acceptable for modification, what it can safely support. But we're just showing you some of the functions and how you can do it at the moment. We can toggle between the original values and see the change we've made in real time. And we can also look at things like the physical increase as a percentage here. And if we turn the percentage off, we can see the Newton meter increase as well.
So you've made a change in a percentage. Is that typically what you would do on that map? And what are the other options?
So it depends on the map itself as to the tuning that's required. Typically for something like a torque limiter, we would set the maximum torque that we want it to be, work out what that percentage change is, and then scale our modification up to that. So it's all about the tuner's signature, their style of tuning. We aim for a very smooth and progressive tuning so that we don't overload any of the drivetrain on the vehicle. And it's what we sort of actively promote. We're not looking for maximum power on this engine at 2,000 RPM. Let's be honest, maximum torque there. We're looking for it in a higher RPM, between 4 to 5,500 RPM, where the optimum or peak torque is for that engine.
But that looks like a very simple map to me, incredibly simple.
Yeah.
Can we see something a little bit deeper, a little bit more complex?
Let's open them up. So as we close it, it automatically gives you this option if you want to copy those similar changes. So we'll just press OK for there, and that's copy those similar percentage changes. Of course, all this we're going into much more detail in our training courses. So let's go down and have a look at some of the other maps we've got on here. And we have our Spark Advance.
Okay,
So
that's
now we're
map
into a bigger map now, yeah.
Okay.
So far more complicated of a map. We actually have 36 of these maps behind. I'm not going to bore you all going through each map individually. We'll just look at the top level one on here.
Does that have the same ability that if you change one, it can change the others?
Exactly the same, yeah. So again, it's important understanding how you're making the change and how that's going to affect the similar maps. So we always recommend check through all 36 of them. It may feel a little bit tiresome and boring and repetitive, but you need to confirm that they're all of similar values before you put similar changes across them.
Well, I guess if you're saving this as a project, again, you've got the advantage. You do it once, do it right. It takes you longer. Exactly. You've got it saved. Then you don't have to do that again. It's done forever then, really, on that map.
It's attention to detail. That's the thing. When you're developing a tune for the first time, make sure you spend that time going through and understanding each of the maps. So we have our air quantity across the top, up to 1500 milligrams per stroke. We have RPM down the side, and we have actual degrees of timing. So that's the point of basically spark before top dead center. And this map can look a little bit overwhelming and struggling to see sort of where the patterns in the data are. So let's change it up a little bit, and let's go to the 3D.
Okay, that's nice.
So with the 3D, we can navigate around and we can actually see how the table looks in a sort of a 3D environment, a real sort of world environment. This helps us picture much easier where the high points are, the low points are, if there's any flat spots or hesitations. And this, again, is where things like data logging, software like the dyno drive. So if you can see there's any flat spots when you're testing the vehicle.
I'm guessing this would be crucial at a time of pink on the dyno, for example. If you're getting detonation
exactly,
and you wanted to pull things back a little bit, you'd be able to...
You can very quickly come into here, see where you've got, okay, it's starting to pink or det a little bit at the top end here. We've got a lot of increased boost through this with the increased torque we've done. We can come into here and we can start to make changes either as a percentage or very small incremental changes here, 0.005. Let's just keep it as a 1% for now, and we're just going to reduce that down.
So you can change it in the table format, but you can change it live on the graph format as well.
Yeah, you can see that there. So I'm making slightly extreme changes, of course, just to show you, but we can change the percentage here live on the screen. So it's sometimes
that's a really nice feature.
It really is useful as a tuner to be able to visualize the table. Some people work great with the tables, some work great with the 3D, others work in a combination of both. But when you do have large tables, and I'll just change back for a second to see, when you do have large data tables like this, and they're to 3 decimal places, there's a lot of information there to take in. Combine that with 36 maps.
Yeah.
And that's before we look at the rest of the drive.
Yeah, this is just one map.
One map. It can become a little bit blurry trying to look at all of the information and see where the patterns and transitions are in there. The advantage, of course, once we've modified something in 3D, we can see with that highlighted red area there where the modification is that we've made. So it tracks everything we've done in 3D, brings it across to the table. And likewise, if we made a change in the table, that would also be highlighted where the modification is as well. Another really key advantage is when we do go back into 3D, I just want to spin this around again so we can see, we can again toggle between the original and the modified. So it makes it really easy to see where you were and what you've modified to.
Okay, great. We're making quite good progress through the Alientech ECM software. Do ask any questions on this software. We're going to move on to WinOLS shortly, but before we move on, if you've got any more ECM questions, please do feel free to fire them in because we've got time to answer them.
So similar to a lot of different pieces of software out there, but a really powerful thing with ECM is the fact that it has both the 3D, we have 2D, so we can actually see what the map table looks like. We can confirm all of the maps have actually been identified, the similar maps to each other. So you can see this first one here we've already modified on the screen. We can zoom in vertically. We can see our changes, and you can just about make out, if I move to the top of the screen, we can see the differences in that 2D view. Okay. So again, it helps us track those changes and if anything needs to be added to the driver, perhaps.
I've got an amateur question. So I've got a 2D graph there. Other software will display 2D graphs too. Am I right in saying that if I learn what that graph looks like and I get experience in ECM and I recognize that graph, I would recognize the same graph in other software?
Yes. And
so you could use this as a learning software kind of, because this has identified this for me.
Yeah.
If I was using another software that didn't do that, but I've learned on ECM, I can transfer that knowledge quite easily.
Yeah. So you've led beautifully into one of my pro tips.
I did not know that. That was not
This is not rehearsed, no. ECM Titanium can empower not just your tuning inside of this software, but if you're using other software as well. So for those that are using WinOLS, and it might be you need to use WinOLS for whatever you're tuning, a stage 4 tune and
something
EVC 5, bigger turbos, cams, etc. It's beyond what is normally supported within the driver. However, you're trying to find that torque limiter or that fuel quantity limiter. You're struggling to find out where it is inside of WinOLS. Jump into ECM, start to train yourself. It's almost like the NLP. Start to train yourself as the pattern recognition, what the map looks like. When you've seen it a few times in ECM in the 2D, you'll then start to recognize them really quickly inside of WinOLS when you're scouring through the ECU, looking for each of those maps.
Nice tip.
And while we're on that point, another pro tip on there, we can see at the top of the screen here, we've got the map address. You can follow the cursor right at the very top above the go-to. We've got the map address for each map as I move across. You can see it changing on the screen and just above the mouse here. That is the location of that map.
In any software?
In this read file. Any software you put it into, if you go to that address, you will see that map.
You could literally make a map pack in WinOLS running side by side. Long job, but you could find the maps if you couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Wow, so you don't like have a damos file or something. You could...
Yep.
That's genius.
Yes.
That is genius. Oh, question just in.
This is from Luca. Does ECM Titanium have enough maps if we want to do more advanced tuning, stage 2 or stage 3?
Good question.
It is a good question.
One for Simon again.
Generally, for stage 2, a lot of the new drivers have a huge range of maps in there that you'll need for stage 2. So let me just save and exit this and show you the driver again. So you can see in here we've got things like deactivation, exhaust gas valve. You'll find a number of the gasoline maps also have things for off-road and motorsport use only, of course. The naughty maps, yes. But for certain markets, it's a perfectly fine thing to do, and a number of those drivers will have that in there. If there's something you need particularly, remember, you've got the driver request where you can request not only a new driver, but you can take one that's already there and say, can you please add? So if they've got the capability within the damos to locate, they can add those things into there. What I will say, sorry, what I will say
is going to go in with a question.
Really, when you start to get into the higher end of stage 2 and stage 3, you're starting to change things like fuel pumps, injectors.
I was going to ask, give me some examples. Big injectors.
Bigger injectors. You're starting
scaling, or is it?
If it's supported in the driver, yes. But in reality, when you get to that bigger injectors, and that is borderline stage 2, stage 3, obviously vehicle specific, that's when you really move into software, things like WinOLS.
Yeah.
Even stage X support.
Bigger turbos?
Bigger turbos, you're definitely moving into WinOLS because of all the different parameters you need to change.
So we're really talking about things like 200 cell cats, intercoolers, air induction systems, reasonably sort of lightish modification.
Your typical sort of stage 2 stuff, yeah. Effectively what we'd typically term in the industry, your bolt-ons, if that makes sense. So your coolers, your breathers, both in and out of the engine, exhaust, etc., is sort of really the capacity, if you like, of the ECM software. It's designed for that stage 1 and a lot of stage 2 tuning, but it's designed for your...
But at 3, you're pushing your luck. It's just not going to be there.
At 3, it's really sort of getting to the limits of what's capable in that
Luca,
drive.
I hope that answered your question. If you do need any more on that, of course, you can email us directly or message us, and we can get into more specifics if you're looking for certain things to be in drivers. But I'm hoping that gave you a reasonable answer to your question.
Okay, and I mean, in terms of the turbo itself, there are a number of maps in here if you did want to start changing the turbo. But again, just to reiterate, it is really stage 1 and a number of stage 2 is sort of the limit for it.
We're coming up towards sort of like half past the hour at this point, Simon. Is there anything else particularly that you want to talk about ECM, or anything it does particularly well that we haven't covered? Any risks or not so good things? I think we talked about stage 3. I think we understand that sort of limitation. Anything else?
I think we covered. In terms of limits, we've spoke about the tools and as we see with this driver, it does actually support reads from other vehicles, other tools, I should say, that aren't necessarily supported on the KES tool at the moment. And it is a very powerful piece of software, especially if you're first getting into tuning. You haven't got to worry or have the stress about where is the map, what does it look like, how am I going to identify it. You can spend your time in ECM developing and perfecting your tune instead of worrying, where's my boost emitter gone?
Yeah.
So this is a great, not only starting piece of software, but actually for those that have been tuning for a number of years, I'll jump into this. If I've got a brand new file that's come through and there's a driver for it, if I haven't got a damos available, I'm going to take all the information I can from ECM and either do what I need in there or take that information to supplement and support the tuning that I'm doing in WinOLS.
Yeah, I think
the two really help each other.
That's something I actually really didn't know, and I think that's really, really insightful. Great. So if there's nothing else, will come out of the ECM software. That doesn't mean you still can't fire any questions on ECM. We do have on our remap101.co.uk website a tour of the software that goes in a little bit more depth. It goes on for about an hour or so. And as I mentioned a moment ago, if you've got any questions about ECM or Alientech, we've got courses online, but also, we're quite happy to answer questions on email, or we can get a Teams meeting going on a one-on-one basis if it's something that you're looking to purchase or have any questions. And that's partly because Alientech don't do a demo version of this software. So some software out there is like a trial version or a demo software. That's not the case with ECM. So you do need to make the financial choice to buy it. And if you're teetering on that decision and not quite sure, we're here to help, genuinely. Okay, I think the next plan is to go on to WinOLS software. I'm just going to check if there's any other questions. Gavin, any other questions at this time? Okay, well, let's dive into WinOLS then.
Okay, so we're going to keep the same theme, SiMOS 19.6, and we're going to look at a few different files through WinOLS itself for that ECU and that platform. Now, we are going to jump in a little bit deeper into WinOLS in terms of steps along the way. We're not going to go through the whole process of this is how we start a new project and all the important information we need to fill in, just because that will take 10-15 minutes in its own right. We do have that covered in detail, though, on Remap 101. So whether you're doing our gasoline or diesel courses on there for WinOLS, we cover that in detail, as well as the configuration as well, which is something that's often overlooked. If your configuration isn't set up in a user-friendly way, you can actually spend a lot of time doing things and trying to perform actions that the software could have done for you. So it's very easy to get in a bit of a muddle, if you like, and to find yourself working inefficiently and ineffectively inside of WinOLS. So it's definitely worth a watch. Even if you've imported hundreds of files into WinOLS before, have a look over it, check your configuration. You might find some tips and tricks in there that make your life a lot easier in the software as well.
Well, I've got to be honest, I've sat in some of your courses on WinOLS, and you've started, and the first thing you do is, I think, oh God, he's going into the configuration again. But everybody in the room with us, oh, I didn't know that. I don't want to over-dramatize that point. Everybody always says, I didn't know that. And the way that you configure it, everyone's just like, wow, that makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Is that because it doesn't come out the box in a user-friendly way, or how do people not configure it?
It comes out of the box in a very usable way, but because it is such a customizable piece of software, it doesn't always fit everyone's needs and requirements straight out of the box.
Right.
We've been using this software for 2 decades now. It's a very clever, very powerful piece of software, but having it set up in a very user-friendly way helps you spend more time tuning as opposed to more time looking for things in the software. And a couple of those little changes in the configuration can actually prevent mistakes in the file. So it's a very advanced piece of software, but we actually put a few little barriers and buffers in there to help keep you safe as you're tuning, to prevent sort of erroneous changes in the map data.
Okay.
So we're going to look first of all at an example project that has just been freshly imported to show you exactly what WinOLS doesn't actually give you to start with, which is information about the maps.
This is everything you don't get.
Yeah. So we've got a project open here. This is for a SiMOS 19.6. It's a Golf R, 333 horsepower, Mark 8 Golf, and it has found 626 potential maps, but doesn't give us a nice map pack. There's no driver on there. There's no map pack saying, hey, I'm the boost emitter or the fuel map.
This is almost the opposite end of the scale. 1 minute we had everything, now we've got nothing decoded, but we've got a lot.
You've gone from nice supported, nice, safe, happy place with ECM, here are your maps, have fun tuning, to here is a file, go find it all yourself.
But there's a lot of it there.
There is a lot of it there, and WinOLS has an amazing background search. What it will do is, based on the ECU type itself, and again, the configuration we put in, it will search for maps inside of the ECU. So it will find, as I'm just clicking through a few examples here, potential maps in the ECU. The problem is, it doesn't tell you what those maps are. You need to know what that map is for it to kind of make sense. But hang on a minute. We've got ECM. So let's use exactly what I said earlier. Let's go and take an example. We have an address here, 7 Bravo Delta 4A6. Let's go and have a look and see what we have there. So we can go to address. 7 Bravo Delta. Can't remember the rest. 4A6. So 4A6. And we have, for those that are familiar with tuning, we'll see these little curves down here on the screen. These are our torque limiters. And we can confirm that with ECM by opening one up and go into the 2D.
Right.
So you can use this to train yourself as well as to how the maps look and what it is you should be modifying. Now,
that's fabulous. I genuinely, I've learned that tonight myself. I think that's really, really very, very interesting. What if you don't have ECM? You're looking at a lot of maps that you don't know what they are.
Yeah, if you haven't got ECM, this is where our training courses come in, of course, to help teach you and guide you through those typical maps that you're looking for within the ECUs. But ultimately, if you've never tuned this ECU before, you don't know what the map should look like, you're going to be needing some additional information. And this is where...
Buy a map pack?
Buy a map pack, or buy what's called a super map pack, which is a bit like the ECM driver, but instead of 100 or 200 maps, it's 20, 30 or 50,000 maps identified. And we've got one of those lined up in a moment just to show.
Okay, great. Question just in.
Yeah, this is Robert Borodorian. And since ECM provides map packs straight damos with Cobber subscriptions, can you transfer the map pack damos into WinOLS?
Okay, I'm guessing what Robert's realised. Can you copy the whole thing, or have you got to do it a bit at a time?
You've just answered that.
You've got to do it a bit at a time. Every single individual.
So
you can't just take that Alientech drive and sort of post it across.
No.
That'd just be too easy.
That would be a little bit too easy. The subscription would probably be a little bit more at that point if it allowed that. No, but what you can do is use it as that resource, that research resource to look at, to reference against as well on there. But no, it doesn't have the ability to import across into WinOLS. It is something we will look at in our next webinar when we look at StageX and SwiftTech.
Yeah,
because StageX does actually have an integration with WinOLS where you can import for a fee the map pack from StageX into WinOLS.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. Okay, we'll make sure we cover that next time. Another question.
Well, there's a couple of questions. Let's cover this off. So Nishan is asking, I think it's more a generic question about what can you do with hybrid and EV?
Okay.
Generic.
Might come back onto that one in a minute after we finish WinOLS, if that's okay.
Jared Scoggin from Viezu USA.
Jared.
Ready with Jared?
Jared.
Easy ECM question. Can you also share some information on the promo version of ECM Titanium
And some of the pros and cons versus the full version, considering the cost difference.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can cover that one. They're absolutely identical. They're absolutely identical, and they do exactly the same thing. There is no difference, except the price. And that is basically, if you have a master tool in your name, you can buy the full version at a promotional price, which is pretty much half price, quite literally. I think, don't quote me exactly on this, it works out about 900 euros versus 2,000 euros. And basically, just think of it as a discount, a loyalty scheme, if you like. If you don't have an Alientech master tool, we're talking about the KES, of course, then you have to pay full price for your ECM. If you have got one, you can buy one and only one version of ECM at literally 50% off on the promo price. But that software is paired to a master tool, and only that master tool you can use it. If you try and split them, they will charge you the remaining 1,100 euros because it's no longer priced. You can't sell the two things separately, but provided they are being used together, your promo version of ECM Titanium is half price. In fact, it's a little bit better than a half price. But function and feature-wise, they do exactly the same thing. It's just whether or not you've got a master tool to link it to. Hope that helps, Chad.
I'll answer the EV one.
You go or go.
We've tuned EVs with ECM.
I'm going to say BMW i8. That's a hybrid.
That's a hybrid. We've tuned that with ECM as well, and with WinOLS. So
Nissan Leaf.
Nissan Leaf, yes.
Nissan Leaf.
Which is incredibly complicated with two maps you need to change.
And what do we get with our two maps?
There is a torque limiter for eco mode and a torque limiter for performance.
And you go really, really fast, but you burn the battery quicker, I'm guessing.
Correct.
So
but actually, one of the big advantages with tuning those is the improved range and economy. So reducing the torque limiter for the eco mode, because it still accelerates too aggressively.
Ah, I see.
The eco one.
You're slowing it down.
Slow it down slightly, elongates the battery life.
Wow, there you go. Tuning EVs.
Yeah.
And there are a few other listed, not as many, of course, as you'd like.
Depending on the tools and things. We've got some of the Jaguar, I always get this wrong, I-Pace.
I-Pace, yes.
Some of the I-Paces are supported. And there's a few more EVs starting to sort of trickle through now. But the hybrids are fantastic because they've got a combustion engine attached to them.
Yeah.
And it's the combustion engine that you're typically modifying.
Like the BMW i8. They're really good.
BMW i8, yes, they go really, really well. A little 1.5 turbo, it's up 30, 35 horsepower increase. Doesn't sound like a huge amount, but actually from that side of the engine, helping the electric side, it goes fantastically down the road.
Okay.
This runs really, really well.
Conscious of, just want to sort of get a little deeper into WinOLS, because I know a lot of people will have dialed in to see the WinOLS.
I just want to show a really quick sort of pro tip about how to add a map inside of WinOLS, because it's one of those things you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
WinOLS will not automatically identify what we call single row maps. So a something times one.
Okay.
Let's say a torque limiter or a boost limiter.
Yeah.
But what we can do is, if we can identify where we believe the map to be, here.
How would you know it's there?
Well, two things. One, we cheated and used ECM. Secondly, you've got to have something to refer back to. You're not just going to go blindly into an ECU and go, oh, this is it.
Grabbing bits of
this is experience and time spent looking at ECU after ECU after ECU. It does get easier the more you look at, and the more you can view in 2D, the more you start to soak in those patterns and recognition on there.
Okay. So
we can roughly work out that this is probably going to be our map table. There is a rule for axes that they can only move in one direction, either up or down. Mm-hmm. You can't have 2 RPM reference points the same value, because the ECU won't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we know our map is the curve that goes up and back down. Our axis is moving in one direction. Now, what you used to have to do is almost count the points of data to work out how big the table was going to be. However, if we look, and you can see this in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen down here as I'm moving along, the value says 3,500. It's going to move down 3.5, 2,000, and it drops suddenly to 20. It's a value that's slightly out of sequence with the others. They're in the thousands, jumping 500 at a time. If I right-click here and select columns 20, that basically means width 20. I've done nothing more than just left-clicked on that columns 20, and WinOLS has gone, oh, okay, I see a 20 here. You want the width as that. We're going to assume the first part is the axis, and the second part is the table. It arranges the width correctly. It highlights it. And all I have to do now is press the K for kilo. It's also up here as the create map button.
I was going to say, why K?
It's the shortcut up at the top.
Okay.
Those familiar with WinOLS will be familiar with that. If you're not, it's a really good key to use. Saves you a lot of mouse clicks and moving over the screen. But I'm going to create a new map. The map has been created.
Okay,
so the map's been created on there.
I now recognise something. I can see, I'm looking at numbers.
Yeah, so it's created the table for us. It's tried to put the axis information in there, but in this case, it's got it a little bit wrong because I've got a damos open as well. So this is another thing. WinOLS is actually looking around at other things you've got open and trying to take that data to help.
It is not.
Yep. That description that was just here.
Yeah.
Does not exist in this project in any way, shape or form.
But it's grabbed it from something else.
It's grabbed it, the fact I've got a damos open, it's looked at it and pulled information through. It could be a previous damos I've had open in my profile, etc. But this project has never had that put in there. You'll see it sometimes with some files. It will just put that into the correct default format of 1. There we go. So this is why it would come out as the raw data. But you'll see that with some ECUs, it will actually convert it into RPM or into other particular values for you based on the WinOLS sort of machine behind the programming behind it. Very clever. And really simply, I'm going to put a quick conversion in there, a factor at the bottom. And this is something we teach on the training course and something that you can garner from looking at the values in ECM, working out, well, it's RPM. It says 7,000 at the end. My raw value is 14,000. Probably need to halve it. You can also, something we'll cover in Stage X, Stage X actually allows you to look at the properties and you can borrow the conversion directly from Stage X, copy and paste it into WinOLS.
So I'm getting a clear feeling. I mean, we talked very much in our last session about, one tuning tool doesn't really cover all your bases and you need a couple of tuning tools to cover the most amount of vehicles and also for reliability and stability and for help and support.
Yep.
But the message is quite clear, I think, on software too, isn't it? One software is not the answer. You're going to need, no matter how proficient you are, you preferably need a couple of softwares is going to make you more efficient.
Yes, and you couldn't have said it any better, to be perfectly honest. There's, 10 points.
10 points.
There's always another piece of software, a new tool comes out or an update to an existing tuning program that offers something new. I mean, I wonder how many people out there have got KES and ECM who would never have thought to look at ECM for a SiMOS 19.6.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I wouldn't do, because of course it's not on the KES tool yet.
No, it's a relatively new released vehicle, sort of back in last year. Yeah, but last year it was released. Currently, obviously not on the KES 3, but without actually seeing this here, you probably wouldn't have thought to even go and look at ECM for that, to even request the driver for it. So it's important to understand that just because that software isn't showing something at that time doesn't mean it can't support it. And yeah, ECM, Stage X, SwiftTech, they all feed in to your tuning capability.
One software doesn't do it all. Okay, great. Conscious time. Oh, one more question just come in.
A couple of things. People ask, is there courses for EVs?
Not yet, as far as I'm aware, Simon. Is that something we've got in the pipe?
Potentially, I think I just gave gave it all away with there's 2 torque limiters.
Might be a short course.
Yeah, quite a short course. There's not a huge range of them currently supported. So as the supported list starts to grow and the complexity starts to grow on them, we'll put something together for that. Currently, it's quite a limited range. There's about 18 months to 2 years worth of the iPace is supported. And again, it's similar with the Nissan Leaf. There's about 2 years of the Nissan Leaf that's supported.
It could be something we could do a little one-on-one session if somebody needs, even online potentially. And another question?
Yes, it's Tom Nisi.
It's asking how he identifies a map with WinOLS.
If you don't have ECM for reference.
Yeah, so we've sort of covered that a little bit already. You have to have something to reference against, or have seen those maps a number of times before in similar ECUs.
You've got a couple of choices. You've either got to have ECM or another software that will find it for you. You've got to have the experience to recognise it in a 2D format, or you're down to buying a map pack
or damos, Again, that experience side of things, it might be, this is actually using, it's a Siemens ECU, SiMOS ECU. It's actually using Bosch architecture for a number of its maps.
So the structure would look like something you may have seen
before in a Bosch, and you start to look at it, look at the values, apply that Bosch logic to it, and the values then start to add up.
This is a torque map we're looking at the moment.
So that was a torque limiter map, yeah.
That looks quite unique to me. Is it fair to say that there's not another one that's going to look that close? You could probably identify it from that quite quickly with a bit of experience.
With a bit of experience, you'll be able to identify that really quickly, yeah.
Okay, because it's quite a unique looking map.
And this is one of the things actually to say. Look at other ECUs. So you might not have something for this particular model 19.6. Look at the different SiMOS 19, SiMOS 18. It's all a lot of knowledge. You can take that information from one to another typically.
Build your own knowledge so you get quicker at identifying them.
Each ECU, just to say really quickly, a Bosch ECU, we're still seeing in brand new Bosch MG1 2024, the supported ones, 2023, 2024 supported ECUs, maps that have the same structure, pattern and logic as a 1998 Mark IV Golf.
So you could quickly gain that knowledge, and it's very, it spans a lot of ECUs. I am getting a little bit of conscious of time now. We've got quite a bit more to cover on WinOLS. What else do we need to cover?
So I wanted to show an example of a map pack for this particular vehicle itself.
This is where you actually buy a map pack in, which would massively speed up your process if you don't know these. That is quite a detailed map pack looking at it.
Yeah, so now this is something where you would be looking, and this is really stage 2, borderline stage 3 now. So this is showing similar to what you would see within ECM Titanium in terms of a driver, but remember ECM stacked a number of the maps together.
Yeah.
So whilst it might show 150 on the screen, there could be 200 inside the ECM driver. But we can see on here we have a number of maps, a large list on here. Now, the advantage with this ECU is they're pretty much all the same. There is similarity. So here, for example, we have the best part of sort of 20 Optimum engine torque maps. They might be located in a similar location, but once you've modified one in a similar way to ECM, you would copy the changes.
You can copy
the same changes to the next one in a slightly different way. It is literally a copy the percentage and paste to the others, or copy to similar maps, parallel maps they call it. But again, you're not having to modify each one individually, remembering the changes and the location. With our training courses, we do show you the quick methodology of how to speed this process up for you. So I wanted to show you an example of a map pack on there. You'll see the map name itself. Obviously, we can see the addresses on here labeled easily, the map size, and something called the ID. So this is like the shorthand descriptor from the factory to understand that this is a TQ REQ, torque request, and SIM19, SiMOS 19 on there. So it helps us when we're locating things through a damos, for example, that we understand that the ID can also be used as that shorthand to try and find maps. So this is just to show an example of what a typical sort of map pack would look like inside of WinOLS. quite a lot more information than you're going to see inside of ECM because there's no limitations on there. They give everything.
So we're really moving into more capable for stage 3 tuning. Now, you call this a map pack. This is not a super map pack.
No, this is a map pack itself. We will move into a super map pack now. And you may notice that the little browse bar has got a little bit smaller because as I start to scroll down, let's just go back to the top, for example. So we've got port flap actuator diagnosis. We've got things in this damos that are never going to be touched to tuning and modifications.
On any level.
On any level.
But it's in there anyway.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to close all of the map windows and all of the folders. So I'm just looking at the folders now, not the maps.
Not the maps.
We can see we've got 39 in here for anti-tramp functions. That's to stop the vibration, the jumping as it jolts and accelerates away. We've got active surge dampers. We've got a whole host of things. And just look at how many map folders there are inside of here.
Potentially completely overwhelming now.
Completely overwhelming, but for those that are asking about stage 3, hybrid turbos, injectors, this is where you're going to be. This is what you want to be looking at. Yeah. A map pack itself might not have the particular map that you need for a stage 3 or even injector scaling. The damos is what you start to look at. And when we make a map pack, we're making it from a damos.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
You're taking out the bits you don't need and keeping the bits you do.
Yeah, we're picking the bits that are needed for that stage 1, stage 2, or whatever the customer's requirement is.
In many cases, I'm guessing if you're, even quite an experienced tuner, you're probably better off buying a map pack than a super map pack because you've got a lot of treacle to wade through to find the bits you want.
Yes.
There's a good map pack that gives you what you want. You can cut to the chase a little bit better.
Exactly, yeah. So a good map pack inside of WinOLS is like a driver plus, shall I say, almost.
And not wanting to make this too much about us, but in our training courses, and we've got courses coming up in SEMA, if anyone's attending SEMA this year, and we train regularly in America, but in the UK too. And also we've got Dubai coming up where we're doing WinOLS courses this year. This is the sort of thing you go through in some detail.
This is the sort of thing we go through in detail, yeah. And of course, these are available on our WinOLS reseller platform as well. So if you've not registered with that, go onto our ViezuFiles.com. And he said .co.uk then. ViezuFiles.com website. Register with us if you're not already.
What is a reseller?
So a reseller is where you can basically log into your WinOLS and you can go and search our database, our WinOLS database, for matching files that you might want to use. So
and they're ready done files or map packs?
There's originals, there's ready done files, there's map packs, and there's damos files on there as well.
And because this isn't about us, you can actually go in there, I presume, and search for any supplier.
Yeah, you can search for any supplier on there.
Okay.
The ViezuFiles.com is where you manage, obviously, your credits and things for that to purchase those, but also where you can reach out to our technical support team and say, have you got a damos 4? Upload your original, and we'll actively search and try and locate or build a super map pack or damos for you as well.
Notified a question just come in.
I think he's on this topic. And Chris asks, what's the difference between damos A2L? Is it any way you can buy the impact safely? Because there's a lot of people undecided. I'm not sure if they're right.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there are quite a few scammers out there and people these days. What's your advice for Chris, Simon?
Go to a reputable tuning company, and I will say, such as ourselves, there are others out there as well, but typically those that do have a WinOLS reseller platform.
I was going to say, is it fair to say if you are listed as a WinOLS reseller, is that any sort of guarantee of quality?
It is. It's something that's quite well sort of policed, if you like, by EVC and stuff. They do try and keep the standards up there. It's something that I do recommend. Someone that's got extensive database on there, has been trading for a number of years, is well known. You can see the Google reviews and things for. Don't be fooled by the 10 terabytes of damos files for $1.99 on eBay as being...
Or Facebook these days. Facebook is full of them. Buy 10 quadrillion files and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and they give you a download link to go to somewhere. And sometimes you can get lucky and there might be something useful in there. But more often than not, what you find is you might have spent a lot of money on this from a guy on Facebook or eBay or a random forum. And you look at it and it's got some maps, that's brilliant, and you get to where the torque limiters should be and there's no maps over it. They've actually taken those out of the damos and just resold it on, kept them for themselves and resold you the scraps.
Goes to the WinOLS reseller database. Very quickly, because I am quite conscious of time now, we had a question about A2L files and damos and map packs. The difference in a short sentence?
Terminology.
Right.
It's the simplest way of describing it. Damos A2L, if you are a truck tuner, you might not be looking at the gasoline side of things with much interest here, but if you're heavy into your trucks, things like Cummins engines, you'd be looking for something called an ECFG. So they're just factory naming conventions for effectively...
Very big files.
Very big contents pages for the ECU.
Okay, but a map pack and a super map pack is, I think we covered the difference.
A map pack is the tuning list of maps. A super map pack is an original and effectively like a damos or an ECFG that has been combined inside of WinOLS.
I think we have one more question just come in.
Yeah, Sovietsy again. Any plans for clusters for WinOLS in Southeast Asia?
We've trained in Singapore in the past. I don't have any immediate plans. We were looking to do South Africa this year, but I've got to be honest, we're really running out of time. For actually Asia itself, I think we'll try very hard to do something, perhaps Singapore or something next year. But this year, we're really now limited to Dubai, and we've got quite a lot of training going around the SEMA course in November, but we're fast running out of time. Of course, you're very welcome to come and join us in the UK. I appreciate that's maybe not the most convenient thing, but we run most courses, most months here in the UK, and I promise you we will look at Asia next year and we'll get something in the diary. And we do need to get out to South Africa too, because we're getting a lot of requests from there, but it's just timing and planning. Running out of time a little bit now.
One very last thing just to add on there. For those that have, and we mentioned it in ECM, you can copy a file from one vehicle to another with the project comparison. That is probably one of the biggest strengths of WinOLS itself, amongst the many that it does have. You can very easily copy changes from one file to another, even if they're not the same software numbers. One might have more maps than another. You can actually align the projects and copy that data over. Any company that's running really a file service and has multiple clients or even masters that are buying files from them will be doing a similar operation inside of WinOLS, reusing those files. And we do actually have a course online for that as well, if you're interested in that. It's a 1 hour course to show you how to do that.
I think we've just got another question just come in.
Yeah, this is from Josh. Do you have much experience with PCU decoder, or is it worth just getting WinOLS? Sorry, the run.
That's good.
Not a random one.
Throw them in. It's all good.
Yeah, I use a little bit. When it comes to different softwares, I mean, there are the main ones on the marketplace. We mentioned ECM we've shown today. StageX and SwiftTech we'll be talking about in our next webinar. WinOLS really is the sort of the market leader in when it comes into a development piece of software to not only support developing a brand new file, but also to provide that file service out there. It's not to say ECU Decoder, it doesn't have its merits and doesn't do things potentially even better than WinOLS in places. There's a lot of different tuning platforms and suites out there. It's all about using the right one for the vehicle you're tuning and what you're trying to achieve. I mean, there's HP Tuner, for example.
Yeah.
You've got that one car, that one American car you want to tune. You can tune stage 3, 4, 5 with it on most cars. Big power out of that system, and it gives you the maps in a very similar way to ECM Titanium. Yeah. However, you want to go and tune 5 Golfs back to back quickly, and you've developed the one file. It's not really geared up to reproduce that file onto vehicle after vehicle.
Makes a lot of sense.
Every tool has its sort of pros and cons, its merits, if you like. And the more you tune, the more you'll find yourself having 2, 3, 4 different bits of
software, different cars, different applications. Yeah. Okay, great. Do we want to just wrap up on WinOLS? Is there anything else, golden nuggets we haven't covered yet?
I think in terms of golden nuggets, we've covered a number of things on there without getting into really nerdy technical detail in some of the particular maps itself. Just a reminder again that we do have courses online for WinOLS gasoline and diesel, and some of the additional functions and features such as map copying and reusing, and how you can go through and use scripts and things as well, which is quite an advanced feature. Something we'll probably touch upon really quickly. You can record the modifications you've made for a particular vehicle, whether it's adding maps or certain changes, as a script, and then literally deploy the script to go and make those changes for you on another vehicle.
Really?
So it's very useful, particularly with the trucks and things. We do that a lot out in the US with a lot of master file writers out there. We train them how to use this to really speed up the process. Okay, you've got 300 maps you want to change. A click of a button is much quicker than just going through and changing all 300.
Okay. Cool. Great. Well, guys, I think we're probably going to wrap up at this point. As I said at the beginning, you do lead these sessions. We've got the next course booked on early August. We haven't quite set the date yet. I think we're talking about the 12th of August, and that'll be our next live webinar, and that is going to be on the StageX and SwiftTech software. So once again, we're kind of trying to cover both softwares in one session. But if you want us to cover something else, or if you want us to go more in depth, or you want us to start looking at maps or master tools or anything else that you need in the industry, you drive these sessions and we'll take on board what you say. Fire us an email, drop us a message, and we'll try and get you on. In the meantime, anything else from yourself, Simon, tonight?
That's all from me tonight.
Okay, let me just check. Are there any more questions that have come in?
There's a couple of things. Charles asks how much for ECM. I have a WinOLS already.
The question that actually is almost a little bit back on what Jarrod said earlier. It depends if you have a mastered Alientech tool or not. If you have a master Alientech KES 3, we can get you massive discount by offering you the promo version. If you don't, it's around €2,200. But we do offer a little bit of trade discount, particularly for our customers and people we know. Say you've been on one of our webinars, and we'll always try and do the best price for you. We do have it in stock. All our tools and software come with free training and support, so we'll get you up and running. Will we cover map writing in great detail? Nope, but we do a course for that. But we will make sure that you get installed and up and running, and let us know if you've got that master tool or not, and that will govern the best price that we can do for you. Any other questions before we leave it, Gavin?
Chris says, is it just WinOLS you can buy, or do you need to buy EVC?
That's
a really good question, actually, and I'll answer it as quick as I can on there. You can just start using WinOLS straight out of the box. As I said, configuration-wise, you can adjust, but there's nothing you need to buy once you've got WinOLS to actually start using the software. If you want to start importing damos files, and this is a key difference between stuff, a damos file on its own needs a plugin that has to be purchased with WinOLS to import the damos, because the format, and so it's 50,000 maps, and basically
you can't just buy the WinOLS software, buy a damos, and they're not going to work without a plugin.
However, any reputable reseller of damos files will be able to provide you that as what's called a super map pack. That is a project, an original, with the damos already put inside, packaged together, and you can just drop straight into your WinOLS. It has all the vehicle properties.
Okay, you don't need to buy anything else.
You don't need to buy.
Otherwise, you need to buy the plugin.
Need to buy the plugin, and if typically your German is not as fluent as your English or any other language, if you're using the damos importer, you're probably going to need to get the language translation pack as well.
Because it tends to come in German.
Tends to come in German, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I hope we've covered all of your questions there. If we've run out of time and we've not covered questions, or you think of something that comes up later, this whole webinar is going to be on YouTube tomorrow, and you'll be able to watch it again. And if it sparks any more questions, just fire those questions into us. We're genuinely here to help. We are a team of 35 here in the UK. We're a reasonably sized operation. We've got a big team of file writers and 2 full-time trainers. So, get in contact if we can help with either tools, software, or training. We'd love to hear from you. And at that point, I'll say good night.
That's good night from you and good night from me. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.